Well, welcome to the first episode of Cocoon for 2023. And for our very first episode, we're so lucky to have Soraya Saraswati on as our special guest. And Soraya is a yoga therapist, meditation teacher, author, and musician with more than 40 years' experience in the field. So welcome, Soraya.
Thank you. It's lovely to be here, Karen.
Thanks. So let's start at the very beginning. So how did this all come about for you? Because you've been working in this space for a while now, but where did it all begin?
Well, my first career was actually as a dental therapist in the Northern Territory, and I was working in Darwin and Arnhem Land. And I met a couple of swamis while I was up in Darwin and started practicing yoga. I actually went to adult education classes and pottery was booked out. And so I opted for yoga. Now that one class changed everything for me.
Wow.
Yeah, it was quite a stressful job being a dental therapist, which is a specialist working with the teeth of young children. And I specialised with children who were afraid and in trauma. And when I worked out in Arnhem Land and on some of the Aboriginal settlements out there, we couldn't even get the children to come into the dental caravan. So I would often sit in the paddock scraping out caries and putting temporary fillings in for children and doing my best to teach them a little more about nutrition and looking after their teeth. So I was by the time I was 21, I was quite burnt out. And I had moved to Katherine, and I was living in Katherine in the Northern Territory. And this was a long time ago in 1981. And I received a snail mail about a yoga teacher training course and decided I quit my job quite spontaneously and went, I'm going to go and do that because I need it for myself. At that stage, I wasn't intending on doing anything else. I just felt I needed to know more about this fascinating science. So yes, I went off and 8 years later, I ended up leaving that yoga centre. I did the month's yoga teacher training course and went, wow, there's so much more to this. And, I had a deep thirst for understanding some of the deep ancient philosophies and the mysticism surrounding it. And I was healthy and happy, and I felt like, oh, this is me, So I did stay quite a long time.
Oh, wow. And then after
everything happened.
Yeah, what happened after you left?
Well, at 29, I decided, I wanted to actually have a family. So I did leave and married and had children. During that time, I studied naturopathy. I studied herbal medicine. I had a thirst for knowledge about health and healing. I continued to teach yoga and ended up having 4 children and practiced right through my pregnancies. So, of course, I ended up teaching pregnancy yoga and mums and bubs yoga and many, many different aspects along the way. Unfortunately, my first husband died and I ended up as a single mum. And, of course, self-care was a priority there, raising boys on your own, and they were very energetic boys. And, so I continued on with yoga and continued with my studies, went on to do yoga therapy. And accelerating through the years, came to 2020 and all the goings on in the last couple of years.
Yes.
I became more and more fascinated with trauma. And I guess this was kicked off by some deeply traumatic experiences in my own life, losing a husband, a son, and a brother to suicide. which, you know, when something comes in threes, it makes you sit up and take notice. And I felt like I was being directed to help people with their mental and emotional health and well-being. And I've always been the eternal optimist. But, you know, when my son passed, I was floored. I was absolutely devastated and went through quite a deep period of grief. And I really drew then on the ancient roots of the yogic philosophy, of my naturopathic understanding, of the self-care that I'd learned through meditation, yoga nidra, relaxation, to really bring myself back to life again. And during that time, I had an amazing awakening and so many different epiphanies that helped me to learn to live in present time and to be with what is, with deep acceptance and gratitude. And I ended up writing my memoir 7 years after Prem, my son, passed, and shared that. I actually called it Shining Through from Grief to Gratitude, because I'd landed in this amazing heart space where, of course, that sadness will always have a little place in my heart. However, I felt free, joyful, and grateful for the time that we'd had together. And I wanted to share that with others because I saw that, particularly suicide, it's such a sticky form of grief. It can be surrounded by a lot of trauma and shame and blame, and the emotions can be very, very heightened for people. So I worked with lived experience through and became aligned with some suicide prevention. Amazing facilities for a while. Roses in the Ocean was one of them, and did a hike through the Northern Territory to raise money for that cause. That was all part of my healing. But then I wanted to give back because I knew that my son wanted to give back as well. And so I began, particularly in earnest in 2019 and 2020, to work specifically with trauma. So of course, I'd studied TRE, trauma release exercises, which were developed by David Baselli. I'd used them myself during my own healing period. I started to facilitate groups in that and just saw the relief that people had without needing to go into the story of their trauma, but just somatically getting that relief. And marrying that with yoga nidra, with mindfulness, with my yoga practices, I started to see wonderful responses in my clients, and that fills me up.
Yeah, that's quite a story, and what a story of transformation. That's amazing. And I wanted to ask you, because you will be doing these sorts of practices at your Awakening Hearts retreat and part of the mentorship. So I think it's a good opportunity now to tell us about that, because it's coming up very soon.
I am so excited about sharing this, Karen. It's like the cherry on the cake for me. It's putting, the last 40 plus years of my work together and offering that. And, way back, if I had had access to this package, oh my goodness, life could have been very different. But of course, we need and we grow through the challenges that we have in life. So the Awakening Hearts mentorship came from observing with a lot of clients and students that they'd come and do a course with me, or they'd do some private sessions with me, and they'd be really inspired. Things would improve for them. But then they might move away, or their space change, or their time schedule change, and they'd fall back into their old patterns again. And I realised that we actually need to be almost holding hands sometimes with someone who can just inspire us and take us along the path a little longer. And then once we're established in a self-care program and a self-realization program that's integrated into our daily life. It's not a thing that's out there that we go to, or, oh, I go to my class once a week. No, I've integrated those lessons into my life. I feel now that I would love for people to feel that they can sit in their heart and feel self-love and experience, loving kindness toward themselves first. And then, of course, everyone else around them reaps those benefits too. So I put this a retreat together as a sort of a kickstart. And then from there we go on with 6 months of mentoring and ending in another retreat at the end of that, or toward the end of that. But each week there'll be an online sharing. There'll be a sharing group. I'll record meditations. I'm also a musician with my amazing husband, who's an incredible flautist and composer. In fact, many people would be using his meditation music in their clinics, etc. So we're going to have a whole package here so that people will have access to that in their own time. They can come here for the retreats, but they can perhaps, if they may live interstate, I have a couple of people interstate who are going to be attending, they can go home but still feel linked in every week. And for those who might miss a week, that will all be recorded, so they have access for that. They also get some personal consultations with myself, and we develop our personal care programs, which I'm quite passionate about as well. There's so much to it. I could go on and on, but I think that gives you the bones of what people will be receiving.
And so the retreat will be at your beautiful property, Mangalam, but you just go there for the day and then you get to stay nearby, and there's lots of beautiful places to stay nearby as well. So, yeah.
The Sunshine Coast hinterland is absolutely lovely. All the beach is not too far away either. Lots of Airbnbs around here. But we'll have 3 full days here. I've got an amazing Ayurvedic caterer who's going to do delicious food for us. So we'll really be looking at nutrition as well. I'm also an Ayurvedic health coach, so we'll be looking at, our body types, our doshas, and what foods nourish our bodies, our very different bodies. That's another aspect of the retreat too. So even the food that we'll be eating will be nourishing our bodies.
Yeah, it sounds amazing. And so you can see here at the bottom of the screen is the website that you can visit to find out more about the retreats and mentorship that Soraya is offering. So, yeah, so it looks like an amazing offer. And I wanted to ask you, so you're dealing with very heavy topics in terms of working with people with their trauma. And what do you do afterwards to, I guess, boost your energy levels, or to also recover yourself, because you are giving a lot when you are helping people with such heavy topics?
Well, it's interesting you should ask that, Karen, because I don't make it heavy.
Oh, good. Wow. Good.
There's a lot of laughter that goes on, even with these topics, because we're looking at ourselves in a non-judgmental way. with the TRE trauma release, we don't have to be talking about stories or rehashing our pain. We're really working somatically, and that actually can be quite a joyful experience. I mean, sometimes there's tears, but there's a lot of laughter as well, and a lot of release. But for me, myself, every morning for me is sacred. So I have my sacred mornings. I don't take consultations or see people before 10 o'clock in the mornings generally. So that's my sacred time, and I get up early. So I've got hours to myself. And I usually start with, my hot lemon and filtered water, and I go and we have an amazing garden here. So I go and sit in nature and just connect with the earth and with the energies of the trees and the flowers. And I listen to the birds because it's usually around dawn. And then I do my meditations, breath work, pranayama. And then I usually go and have a cup of chai. And then I go and sit in nature again. And then I do my asana, my stretching, my yoga stretching. I also do qigong tapping. And once I've done that, I connect in with my darling husband, and we wander around the garden together. And then finally I'll have breakfast. And and then I'm ready for the day because I've had my sacred morning.
Yeah. So you set yourself up for success.
And then in the evenings, before I go to bed every night, even if it's raining, I'll take an umbrella. I like to wander under the stars. So my husband and I will go out and we spend a lot of time together, but very often in silence. So I spend a lot of time in silence, and we'll walk under the stars. I just like to see the moon and the stars, although sometimes it's cloudy and you don't see the moon or the stars.
But you know that they're somewhere.
Yeah, but you still see the silhouettes of the trees. Sometimes you see a possum. So, yeah, it's just that reconnection with the great cosmos that's around us and the earth that's beneath us.
And what do you wish you knew? Because you've got some great experience in the field. What do you wish you knew at the beginning to sort of help you to, I guess, avoid burnout and care for yourself when you're giving so much to others?
Good question. I don't need to please anyone but myself, and I need to love and honor myself exactly as I am in any moment.
Yeah, I think a lot of people forget that. I think sometimes you're just so you want to help so much that you forget yourself.
Yeah. It's like, when you're in the aeroplane and they say, with the oxygen mask that comes down, give it to yourself, then put it on the baby.
Yeah.
We can give so much more when we're energized, when we're calm, when we're relaxed, when we're joyful, and then it just flows and it's effortless.
Yeah, that's great advice.
And I think many of us, particularly women, in the time that I grew up, we're not quite good enough. That I'm not quite good enough, and I'm still, working with clients. That's one of the biggest programs that they're running subconsciously is I'm not good enough. Oh, I couldn't possibly do that. It's like, hold on, we're all the same in this, and we're each of us perfect. And if we can understand that, and then start from there with love.
Yeah, that's a beautiful reminder. I wanted to ask you too, because you're quite active on social media, but how do you strike that balance? Because it can take up so much of your time, you can get sucked right into it. how do you maintain the balance? Because for your business and the services you offer, you need to have a presence on there, but how do you not let it overtake your life and what you do?
Great question. And I think this is where a lot of people waste a lot of time. Well, I don't look at my phone first thing in the morning. Having, raised quite a few children and watching young people now, often they wake up and the first thing they do is reach for their phone. Well, my phone goes on aeroplane at night after a certain time, and it stays on aeroplane until I've had my sacred morning. Then, when I'm ready, I will check a couple of things, because I also keep in touch with family through messengers. So, there's a family group there as well. And I'll do a couple of posts perhaps, and then I'll leave it. A couple of times I'll check it during the day, but I'm certainly not on it all the time. Yeah, definitely not. It's there's a lot of social media that can be quite detrimental. I try and keep all my posts very positive and very real. We're real people.
Yeah.
We don't look like Barbie dolls. We're real. And because I love permaculture gardening, I've often got my hands in the dirt. So, I like to share a little bit of that too, and keep it as real as possible and as honest as possible.
Yeah, that's great advice as well. And now we're sort of at the end of, beginning of February now. Did you work out, some people will have goals that they want to achieve during the year? Are you a goal setter? And if so, what would you like to achieve in 2023?
I don't set goals as such, because I like to go with the flow. And sometimes we have an idea and then it just doesn't work out. The flow isn't there. So I think it's important that we're flexible enough to see that, rather than, bashing our head against the wall. So I had a deep feeling, and I'm excited about sharing the Awakening Hearts mentorship. And those people that join that mentorship, I really want to give them my absolute best for the next 6 months. And then I'd like to continue that on. So that will be something that I'll offer again for 6 months, and so on, and build that and grow that, so that we have a beautiful Awakening Hearts community and a whole lot of resources that people can use. Because I feel there is a great awakening to a higher way of heart-based, kind living, and including self-care. And so a lot of people that come to me are actually carers or therapists themselves. And if we all hold hands and support each other, then we can change the world. We can make the world a better place. Now, I think that was a song.
Yeah. But that's a good goal to have too, isn't it?
I always hear these little riffs when I say something. So yeah, I don't set goals setting in cement. I'm doing the Awakening Hearts. Usually we run an India retreat towards the end of the year, and if there's flow for that, that will happen again this year. Next year, it looks like, if everything's clear, Terry and I'll be going back to work in Europe again. And what happens in between and around that, let's just let the magic come in and see where the universe takes us.
Yeah, that's great advice too. Just let it all unfold.
Yeah, be with it, because if I have an idea the way my life's going to be, I say the universe, consciousness, whatever, God, you can use any word you like, but there's a greater force than this.
What is it? I heard this saying from a Swami, actually. They said, nothing makes God laugh harder than people with plans.
Yeah, That's wonderful. I love it. Yeah. And so, you know, I'm open, I'm listening, and I work intuitively, and I encourage other people to as well, and not get too fixed on the way things are going to look. Because it's even with the Awakening Hearts mentorship, you know, new additions might come in to fill that bouquet of flowers or that offering and make it even more juicy for people. And I'm excited about that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And then my final question to wrap up our chat is what advice would you give to new practitioners in the field to avoid burnout, to make sure that they're looking after themselves and that they're not giving too much?
I would say develop a self-care program that fits into your lifestyle. And that could be anything. It has to be something that you love, something that makes your heart sing, something that helps you to feel connected, grounded, and rejuvenated. Now that could be walking on the beach, you know. I know some therapists that are surfers, so they have make sure they go surfing 3 or 4 times a week. That might be walking in the forest. For me, gardening's another one as well, just going out into the garden. Not at the moment because it's too hot.
Yeah.
But yeah, spending time in nature, but making sure you actually set that time aside. Like I've got my sacred mornings, you know. Otherwise, if you think, oh, I'll just fit that in, no. Have a time slot that's yours. And that's not negotiable unless there's an absolute emergency. That's your time. And take care that you don't let old habits like scrolling through social media eat into your time. Make that your sacred space.
Yeah, more great advice. So thank you so much for being our very first guest for the year. And yeah, so we'll look forward to seeing what happens at the Awakening Hearts retreat and mentorship. So thank you so much, Soraya. And we'll be back next month with another episode of Cocoon. So thank you.
Thank you, Karen. That was wonderful.